Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Schaftlein Report. I am not Mark Schaftlein, as you can clearly see. My name is Tom Amenta. I am the author of the book, The 20-Year War. I've been privileged enough to be a frequent guest here on the report. And unlike Mark, I do not come from gorgeous, beautiful, sunny Delray, Florida. I am coming to you from freezing, frigid, 8-degree weather of Omaha, Nebraska. Unfortunately for all of us, I am here because Mark came down with a case of the Omicron variant of COVID, and we all wish him a speedy recovery. And one of the things that is not recovering is going to be the credibility of the CDC as they continue to flip-flop faster than John Kerry did in 2004 when it comes to the guidance on how we as Americans should attempt to react to the disease. Now, let's take away our ability to make our own personal choices and individualism here for a second. Our government and agencies such as the CDC are supposed to be experts capable of giving clear, concise guidance to help us make informed decisions. I am not a scientist. I work in media and marketing, just like Mark works in, as a trader in capitalism when he's not talking to all of us about the things going on in this world. That's why we look to people that have intelligence. We look to people that have good guidance. And unfortunately, to continue the analogy, it feels like the CDC wants to swift boat their credibility, or what tiny shred of it that they had, faster than just about anything imaginable. Oh, Lord and goodness. Today, after gumming out a couple of days ago saying that you only needed 5 days of a quarantine because Omicron is not as dangerous and not as deadly, they have flip-flopped to change their guidance. And it's incredibly confusing that even on their site, it doesn't seem that they can make up their mind whether or not the rapid tests that the Biden administration recently said they were going to send to all of us, should we want them to help us make these informed decisions and keep ourselves potentially safe, or at least not getting the virus, if they're even going to work. It was so bad, in fact, that Caitlin Collins of CNN, the White House press reporter, even took to Twitter to openly question them to ask if these things are correct. From the website, it says if you tested positive for COVID-19 with a viral test within the previous 90 days and subsequently recovered and remain without COVID symptoms, you do not need to quarantine or get tested after close contact. Now, look, I don't care what side of the vaccination debate you fall on. I really, truly don't. Like many of the people at the Schaftlein Report, including Mark, I was vaccinated. I've been vaccinated. And also, like Mark, I caught what they're now calling a breakthrough case of COVID. But if they can't seem to tell us if these rapid tests are any good, and if they can't seem to come up with a reasonable standard as the scientists with their MD and PhDs and all this knowledge of a reasonable standard, and if they're telling us that if you've had it in the past 90 days, which I certainly fall under, then we're okay and we don't need to worry about any of this quarantine and any of these masks and any of this immunity, and we're only doing it to try and help other people around us. Aren't they sort of low-key telling us that the concept of natural immunity, which has been roundly dismissed and roundly decried and roundly told that that's not the case, is, to a point, at least viable? It certainly seems that way to me. And furthermore, ladies and gentlemen, it's just, I understand that scientists want to have precision. I understand that scientists want to be able to tell you something in a specifically factual way. And if you're like me, where you've been around scientists when you're also a communicator, when you're also someone who sort of speaks to a lower common denominator that isn't quite super precise, it can be incredibly frustrating when they want to tell you, well, in theory, or well, we think it might, or we haven't quite proven yet. Which, as a side note, for all the people wondering what I mean, scientists actually don't officially believe that gravity is a law. They believe it is a theory. Trust me. Go jump, jump up and down a couple of times. You're going to keep coming down, right? It's this lack of clarity. It's this drive to try and be so crystal clear and so precise in what they're saying that is ultimately confusing all of us. And it's driving me nuts that 1 minute, natural immunity isn't effective as effective as the vaccine. The next thing, you need a booster shot in the vaccine. If you listen to the research out of Israel, the CDC is quoting, they're saying you're going to need a fourth booster in order to be quote unquote protected from the virus. None of this tells us how we can apply all the research and all the data and everything they're doing on the day-to-day. And that's the problem. That is what I look at as someone who just wants to get on with my life, who just wants to live my life in a day-to-day way. That's so infuriating and is so frustrating. And how on earth is the Biden administration not taking more heat for this? Like, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but it's time to actually look at this and say, if you're going to take President Trump, former President Trump, and rake him over the coals for all this poor response and all of this mismanagement and all of these things that the media went out there and said, and the Democrats said, and he was so bad at this and he couldn't do anything, and just the litany of garbage. And yet the largest reported number of cases, 1 million reported daily cases that happened yesterday, has happened on this current administration's watch. That you have a government agency in the CDC that can't even figure out if the tests that the president wants to spend billions of dollars on to let us find out if we're safe are even going to work, to the point where the White House press reporter from CNN of all places is saying, can you clarify this for us? Can you, take a moment and actually explain to us? That's what a doubting, public finds so unbelievable. Say what you want about the former president, but at least he said something and he had a clear sense of clarity and purpose. The Biden on the disease, even if you didn't like it, even if some of the things that ultimately came out, should have been a little better. But this isn't about a vaccination versus not vaccination anymore. This is about how do we get ahead of something that is clearly becoming a problem and clearly continues to disrupt Americans' ways of life now over 2 years into it, right? I'm tired. I'm kind of really sick of this. I hate that my friend Mark is sick and cannot be here working with all of you, talking to all of you, giving his really well thought out and informed opinions tonight. But it's because of this problem that the administration can't solve. And I don't understand how they're not accepting responsibility of now having the largest group of COVID cases in every one single day on record. And it's only getting worse. And I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but it is not an acceptable answer. And it is not reasonable enough to say, well, it's not killing as many people. It's just a little more contagious. No, it's still disrupting American ways of life in an unprecedented, insane way. And you see these far-reaching effects where the Fed is so concerned because we've gone for so long with the rise of inflation that they're working to combat that aggressively. And the markets took a nosedive today because you can either confront inflation and everything going on with that, or you can try and confront this COVID variant the way that people are claiming to do, the way that you even have international people shaming their citizens and the French president, Emmanuel Macron. It's a rock and a hard place for these things. And all of this, in times like this, you look to your leaders, or at least the person who's supposed to be leading us here in the United States, in the current President Biden. And what are we getting? We're going to give you a test that your scientists say might not even work and isn't even worth the price of admission. That, if you did in fact get the virus in the past 90 days, don't worry about it because you're totally fine. The mixed messaging has got to stop. We need clarity. We need honesty. We need leadership coming from the current administration. And it's not happening. Not only is it not happening, and we'll get to this later, but when people are concerned for their health enough to try and take an action, whether the action is right or the action is wrong, they're going after them publicly saying, no, you can go to school. No, it's fine. No, we're going to figure this out. Stop the garbage. Stop the mixed message. Start talking to us as the American people like we're adults. Start talking to us in a way that we can understand your thought process and start doing something to lead. And for the masses of the media, start actually being honest that this is a problem that is a problem across the United States. It is not a problem of one administration that you crucified for it in the previous one, but this current administration, they're doing okay. They're doing what they can. They're going to send us tests. but his own departments are telling us the tests aren't even valid. It is absolutely appalling to me. And speaking of appalling, whoo, buddy, Mark called this one on the 3rd, didn't he? Although we missed the date because they did it even faster. The Democrats are reporting to be using the anniversary of the January 6th incident tomorrow to push for a renewed removal of the filibuster. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And this is something that the current Senate Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell, is calling distasteful, and it's something I completely agree with him. Look, a brief history lesson on the filibuster, and something that you need to understand is that when this was, or the removal of filibusters, and when this was first discussed in 2005, Trent Lott, the junior Republican from Mississippi, called it, quote, the nuclear option. But stop and think about that for a second. What they are proposing, when it was very first proposed, over 15 years ago, it was immediately called the nuclear option, which is why Republicans and Democrats came across the aisle and said, okay, how do we solve this? And how do we not make this happen? Because this is a bad idea. Okay. There is not a lot that's ever going to be happening good when you launch nuclear weapons at each other. As a matter of fact, in game theory, which this is one of the few times I can actually use my party trick degree in political science that I got from the University of Illinois, is called a zero-sum game. In other words, everybody loses. And in 2013, when you saw Harry Reid actually execute this nuclear option of removing a supermajority, all presidential nominations, except for the Supreme Court, that's exactly what happened. Okay, so now the filibuster is a way to hold up legislation. It is a way for a specific viewpoint that's usually a minority viewpoint to be heard in America. We are a two-party system. Who is in control of the House? Who is in control of the Senate? Who is in control of the White House changes from time to time. That is by design, by the way. When the Founding Fathers first created the Constitution, this beautiful, amazing, arguably the greatest form of government ever created, James Madison was the primary framer of it, designed it to be the most inefficient government that we've ever had. That seems really counterintuitive. So why did he do it? He did it because, like every good patriot, he saw the world for what he saw the United States for what it could be, and then figured out what are the things that could screw it up. And one of the things that can screw it up is that if we don't compromise, America is 330 million people, right, ladies and gentlemen? And just like you and your neighbor down the street don't always agree with each other, right? But you find ways to compromise. You find ways to, generally speaking, coexist. That's what the Democrats don't want to do and haven't wanted to do since 2013. They're not willing to coexist. They are going to push their agenda and they are going to ram it down everybody's throats entirely to get what they want. That's what started. And then when they cried foul, when then Majority Leader McConnell used the implement that they put into place in order to get Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch through the process, because they kept holding it up and kept refusing to do anything with the vote and kept messing it up. Then they cried foul and said, oh, this isn't fair. Oh, you started this. You started this on the far left. You were the ones that said, everyone called this the nuclear option, but we're just going to use it. So what you have now is what you call in game theory, as a nerd in political science, a death spiral, okay? Because everyone keeps racing to the bottom and everyone keeps arguing over whether this will or won't work. When at the end of the day, the system that we had since 1809, when Aaron Burr adjusted the rules for parliamentary procedure, worked just fine. What the filibuster is, and always has been designed to be, is a mechanism when someone has a really strong opinion to point out and force people to remember what our government was created on. And that's the basis of compromise. There are plenty of things that I don't like about the far left. There are plenty of things that I don't like by certain facets of the right. But what I understand is that 330 million people that have the most diverse people base or voter base in the entire world, which is what America is, we are the great melting pot, are going to have to compromise. All we are asking and all we should be asking for is a reasonable compromise. And yet, what does the far left keep doing? What is the agenda that they keep having? They keep saying, no, it's not enough. We have to keep listening to the Schumers and the Pelosi's and the AOCs cry foul and say how they want to spend trillions of dollars to impress and push their ideal of American life. And this is the kicker to all of it, and this is how you know that not only are they prepared to push the death spiral for their agenda, but I openly question how much they're truly caring about America in these cases. They have one person on their side of the aisle, Joe Manchin, who simply says, you know what? I'm not okay with that. I don't like that. I am concerned that some of these Green New Deal programs that you've spoken of, that you're talking about, might be going too far, too fast, and too aggressively. And I, as the senior senator of West Virginia, who represent the largest coal mining base in the world, want to represent my citizens. That's how America's designed. He's a senator. He doesn't represent the whole world. He doesn't represent all of the United States. As a senator, he represents the people in his constituency of West Virginia. And what did they do to him? We all saw it. We all hear it. The Senate just came back and still everyone's like, Joe Manchin betrayed the Democrats. Joe Manchin betrayed America. Joe Manchin betrayed. Did Joe Manchin betray his citizenry? Absolutely not. He did his job. And yet, this is what we have to constantly hear. This constantly nattering, this constant we want this agenda from the farthest left polemic of our constitutional republic. And that's not what America was designed or built to be. We had the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, and they came together and formed the Constitution. They understood that compromise is necessary. And look, the other thing I understand, and this is why I keep bringing up this concept of the death spiral, is that every time I read something about our democracy, when I read Democracy in America by Tocqueville, which I'm a poli-sci nerd, I love this stuff. When I go back and look at the Federalist or the Anti-Federalist papers and try to pour over and understand our founding fathers' viewpoints, sometimes I get so angry because I'm so sick of wanting to try and compromise, because I feel like every time I compromise with something, it's being taken and it's not being reciprocated. It's got to stop. This has got to stop. This whole nonsense about the filibuster was not started by the Republican Party or the far right. They're the ones that stopped it with the gang of 14, all the way back in 2005, because they realized it was going to be a disaster. And yet, where are we? We are consistently in this position of the Democrats changing the game, trying to remove every sort of filibuster protection while saying it's all into this guise of quote unquote getting things done to make America better. I'm sorry, but that is not America. America is 330 million people with diverse opinions. And I'm sorry, but most of those opinions don't agree with someone from a couple blocks in Queens. Many Americans like myself who live in Omaha, Nebraska, have never been to Queens. So how are you going to tell me that you know what America is? You know how that's better? Because the truth is most people that live in New York City or Queens have never been to Omaha, Nebraska. So stop it. Stop telling me you know what's better. Stop telling all of us that you have some great plan when all you're doing is just fighting for your idea and you're not listening to the other side. Go back to the very basic principles and tenets of America, please. And the fact that they're not is going to lead what I think a lot of us want, and that's the market correction of a lot of these people being voted out of office in 2022 because they don't get that. They don't understand what America was built to do. When you do a deal, you're never going to get everything you want if the deal is fair for two parties involved. That's called compromise. That's called the basics of human interaction. So can we please, if not, get back to that, at least plant this flag and stand and say, your idea of getting things done, it's not about voters' rights with the left right now, just like it wasn't about presidential or judicial nominations in 2013 or 2017. It wasn't about any of that. It was about power. It was about grabbing power. And it is time, and this time there shouldn't be no compromise. This time, the flag needs to be planted and say we are going to go back to the way it was since 1809, because it was put together for a darn good reason, and it's going to stay that way. And shame on you for anyone who thinks that somehow this is okay in the United States, because it absolutely, positively, 100% is not. All right. So the Italian in me came out a little bit, got a little fired up. And one of the things I love here at the Schaftlein Report is how we always kind of interject a little bit of levity into the story and how we do some things like that. And this one, this one just cracked me up. All right. So if you live on the East Coast, especially the North in Virginia, Washington, D.C., in that area, they got hit by a ton of snow. I'm talking record-breaking snowfalls in that area. And I-95, which is arguably the most traveled highway in the United States, got essentially shut down through Virginia as snow crews could not get there to clear the roads, as everything was going on, and just became more and more a mess and more clustered. And people have been on that road now for over 2 days. Truckers are showing what makes America great by handing out water and food because they keep it in their trucks. People are trying to help other people, but it's still a mess. Well, the governor, or the soon-to-be outgoing governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam, who's a Democrat, had some opinions. And the opinions cracked me up because he's out there blaming the motorists for being on the road traveling right after the New Year's Eve holiday, which is one of the largest times of travel across one of the most major highways in all of the United States. And he's saying it's their fault. And he's also blaming, he seemed to be implying through his press conference that the GOP and the right that didn't, really plan for this, really didn't help, or they left the government in disarray, and part of it's kind of their fault. Here's the funny part. This just cracks me up. Virginia senator, in the Senate, in order to get back to DC, Tim Kane, who, fun fact, is a Democrat, got stuck on that road for 27 hours because Governor Northam couldn't keep the roads clear. He couldn't plan for the fact that the beginning of January is one of the most traveled times because everyone's been moving back and forth for the holidays. Now, look, it's a bad break. It's weather. We don't control the weather. Only God does, right? Of the snow falling. I get that. There can be a little bit of grace for that, regardless of your side of the political spectrum, right? It's cool. It happens. But here's the thing. I grew up in Chicago. I was born there. I grew up there. I lived there for a couple of years recently. But I spent most of my adult life after the military in Durham, North Carolina, 3 hours south of where all this happened. So I know the area really, really well. Virginia gets snow every single year. DC had 24 inches, I believe it was 2014. I'd have to go back and check that. In one 5-day snowfall period. They get this sort of weather. This is not an uncommon, this isn't a rare thing. This isn't like you got 6 inches of Florida down in Delray, Florida, where Mark is right now. This is a very common occurrence. So to not only say that it's the fault of the motorists for being on the road when motorists are normally on a road, and then to somehow say that they were ill-prepared or that the infrastructure, even the far-right GOP, couldn't do something with it, is ludicrous. It's absurd. It's laughable. And this is the thing. If you make a mistake, this is what I was always taught when I was raised in, a deep-seated Christian household, that voted Republican. And that was when you make a mistake, you raise your hand, you hold it up, and you step up and say, "Sir, ma'am, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, and this is how I'm going to fix it." Hey, I'm sure there are a lot of very angry and frustrated motorists, and Lord knows if I was stranded on I-95 right now, I would be too. But at least if a leader looked at me and said, "We were not prepared. It is on me as the governor of this state, and this state wasn't ready. I am sorry, and I'm working to do everything I can to fix it," at least I can respect that. At least I can acknowledge, hey, all right, sounds like he's trying to do something. Yet instead, what we get from this politician is yelling and blaming drivers for being exactly where they're supposed to be this time of year. What were they supposed to do? Not come home? Not go to work? What were they supposed to do? Just hang out and, wait it out or do things like that? No, they have lives. They have places to be. It's on you to clear that road, Governor Northam. It's on you to make sure that everything's going okay. So please stop with the blame game. Again, take accountability for your actions. And this is the problem, is the farther you go to that side of the aisle, it seems the more like if only everyone could get together as a collective, or if only someone did this, or only no. You stand up when you make a mistake. You hold your head high. You look the person, or in this case, the people, dead in the eyes, or in this case, dead in the TV camera, and say, "I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Here is what I'm doing to fix it. And yet you blame everyone so much that you blamed your own sitting senator from the state who was there for 27 hours. What? You didn't want him to go back to Washington? You didn't want him to do his job? You didn't want to represent your constituents? Cool, sir. Bravo. Spot on, Governor Northam. Mentioned earlier that I was born in the city of Chicago, and I had lived there up until last year when I finally moved here to Omaha, Nebraska. And, ooh, buddy, Chicago has long been known as one of the deepest, darkest, bluest places in all of the land, except for maybe San Francisco. And wow, are they having a day today. So the mayor of my former town of Chicago is in massive hot water with another blue agency of the Biden administration in our second COVID-related story of the day. The Chicago Teachers Union, which of the Chicago Public Schools, which holds immense power in that city. And they do a lot of whining. They had a huge strike 2 years ago that dragged out for almost 6 months, almost half the school year. It was awful. Voted today to halt in-person classes due to the Omicron variant of COVID. Okay, 1 million cases like we talked about earlier. People are concerned. They want to make sure that there's safety protocols in place. I don't necessarily agree with it, but at least I can understand that as a logic process, except this is awesome. In the most horribly, I want everything that I want, and I'm not willing to see the bigger picture and see the impact around other people than me. I'm just going to be selfish. Deep far left union thing. Once the teachers voted to not go back to school, the superintendent just up and canceled class. No remote learning. No, here's how we're going to try and find after-school programs for these tens of thousands of children in the city of Chicago. And having lived you, I assure you the number is that high, that parents go to work and school in a lot of ways, the form of childcare, including those after-school programs, help teach them life lessons and life skills to help make sure that they stay out of trouble. No, none of that. We're just done. Not going. We're essentially on a low-level strike because of the Omicron variant. That's already bad. So we've gone from bad, not opening up the schools on a dime, one morning vote, to worse, we're not even having remote learning to be capable of teaching the next generation. And then they went to the worstest, which I know isn't a word, but please work with me here, because at the end of the day, that's the things these kids will be saying. They came out with a list of demands the teachers union did. Among other things, they demanded, quote, better masks for students and teachers to help stop and curb the spread, better than just the cloth masks that many are wearing. They want the state and the city to pay for N95 level protection. Then they want a better COVID testing program. And that's all they said. It was really, really vague by the teachers union, in order to help ward off this or keep people out of school if they are sick. And then, and I want to quote this one directly because this really takes the cake for me. They want the provision of, quote, when in-person learning resumes, principals of schools shall have the authority to flip classes to remote upon receiving notification of a positive case in the class. A, as in one positive test, and an individual principal at an individual school across all of Chicago could just say, nah, time out, go home. We're gonna try and do this remotely. Do you have any idea what the logistical challenge of that is? Do you have any idea the absurdity of one person who has one sick kid can just cancel school? How many of you had the flu or got the flu, or no, better yet, this is even better. How many of you went to school when you were a kid and you got chicken pox from another kid, right? Did that stop school? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, in the case of me, my parents found out that one of my sister got chicken pox. Then they made me and my other siblings get chicken pox, because once you get it, it was over. And then, no joke, in suburban Chicagoland, all the neighborhood kids came over and got infected with chicken pox because we were like 7, and it wasn't going to be as bad as we got it when we were 15, because that's how that virus works. I'm not saying that everyone gets COVID so we can all have a fun time to get that 90 days of natural immunity we talked about earlier, But I am saying that the idea and the absurdity of one principal being able to shut down a school, of being able to tell every single parent in that school that they now have to provide for their children, care and check their learning and do all of these things is ludicrous. It's something past absurd. And here's the thing, and this is the thing that drives me so nuts about this union and this city and this general ideology that comes from that level of the deep blue, is that this isn't going to hurt the wealthy families or the well-to-do families in the city of Chicago. When I lived there, I lived with a 10-minute walk from the bleachers of Wrigley Field. I lived around really, really well-off people. It was right next to Lincoln Park. There were $1 million condos 4 blocks away from me, okay? Those families are fine. They can go stay on their nice, comfy Wi-Fi, and they can do the remote learning, or the parents can work remote, or they can negotiate things. When I worked in Chicago, I worked in the technology space, okay? They'll take them into work, they'll take their kid to work, they'll plant them in front of their computer, and they'll be fine. There's annoyance, there's frustration, there's things that could make things better for these families, but this isn't a burden to them, it's an annoyance. Who it is a burden to and who it is absolutely harming in the worst possible way are the families that are on the west side of the city, which is notoriously and deeply poor, that has all the rampant problems of criminality on it. On the south side, which is always the exact same way, these families that can't afford childcare, they can't afford, through all the litany of taxes and everything that's going on in the city, they can't afford so many things. And now you're going to ask those parents to skip work and a paycheck that they can't in order to watch their children, because that's what's required to be a good parent, and then try and get them to study on really garbage Wi-Fi because the infrastructure in that city, especially in those areas, is a disaster. But you're somehow doing the children a favor. You're somehow helping them and helping empower the next generation. What? Are you kidding me? And this is the thing that's so dangerous of it, is that, like, right now, by them saying that they're attempting to set a precedent, not just in the city of Chicago, but around the country. All for what? Because they want one individual person to be able to cancel an entire school if they have one case. We had 1 million cases of the Omicron variant of COVID yesterday, like we talked about earlier. This is not going away, okay? This is not getting quote unquote better, okay? What we thought initially, or what the scientists, I should say, thought initially with this vaccine is turning out not to be the case. But what do you keep seeing from these far left machines? You keep seeing this, trust the science, even though I think we can say at this point, we're learning on the fly as we go. It's, trust the government, trust all of these things, trust all this apparatus and this infrastructure that keeps clearly doing things that are not in the best interest of its citizenry. It is not in the best interest of any single individual person in the city of Chicago to cancel schools right now. It's not. Certainly not to have a vote early in the morning and cancel it in the middle of the day and say you have no idea when you're coming back, which, by the way, they haven't given a return date. They are saying based on percentages of outbreak cases, when they come down to a certain level, which flip-flopped in the union through the entire course of the day's events today, that's when they're going to do it. It's appalling. It's not right. And it's not fair. Also not fair, and also a stunning discussion of how not having a proper criminal justice system inside of your local municipality or in your government can go awry. The mayor of Chicago got hit in the teeth again because the chief justice of Cook County, which is the county that Chicago is in, a gentleman by the name of Tim Evans, said that some of the most violent alleged criminals in the city of Chicago, 2,300 of them, that are currently on electronic monitoring bracelets because he does not want them in prison because he thinks that violates their constitutional rights to be held pending trial, are going to stay out on the street on these bracelets. 90 of whom, by the way, were arrested and charged and are awaiting trial on murder. Okay? Murder. Not, some sort of assault on thing. There are 23 violent criminals. According to the Chicago Sun-Times, it's like these charges include murder, attempted murder, aggravated gun possession, felonies in possession, sex crimes, illegal gun possession, vehicular carjacking, kidnapping, and attempted kidnapping, among other violent crimes. The city of Chicago had the highest murder rate in the United States and their highest individual murder rate over the past 25 years. It hasn't been this bad in that city since 1996. And the solution to the problem is to take these people that could potentially be there, that are going to trial quickly for these crimes, is to leave them out on the streets. What the heck, ladies and gentlemen? What is it about this notion of, I'm appalled. It blows my mind. And this is the same city that the mayor, Lori Lightfoot, was blaming the shopping centers and blaming the institutions for not having enough security or not trying to keep their own things safe when they're getting professionally looted week in and week out. There's billions of dollars at this point of insurance claims and loss. And there are hundreds of people that are dying in these streets. And the solution to this problem by that deep, dark blue apparatus is leave them on the street. It's cool. It's your fault, Mr. or Mrs. Business owner, that someone looted your stuff. And my police force is super stressed out, which, by the way, it is. The police in the city of Chicago, if they want to use an approved rifle, an AR-15 style rifle, they have to buy it themselves and they have to qualify with it. They also have to buy their own medical kits to include life-saving things like combat tourniquets and most of their other duty items. I know this because I used to live with police officers inside of my building. And once I found out about all that, I took all of my old special operations military medical gear and gave it to all of them because they need it. How do I know that they need it? Because after I gave it to them, 2 days later, one of the cops, who's a very junior rookie person in the force, in order to make ends meet, volunteered for overtime on the west side in one of the worst neighborhoods in Chicago. Comes running up to my apartment, super, super excited. He's like, Tom, you got to check this out. Gotta check this out. I'm like, what's up, dude? He's like, come downstairs. So I go down there, go outside. He's got 3 AK-47 rounds through the back left quarter panel of his car because he got shot at with a high-powered AK rifle by a gang member on the Chicago's west side. But it's that bad. We're going to exacerbate that problem. 200 feet, just hang out and chill out on electronic monitoring bracelets rather than be inside of the prison system awaiting trial for an extremely violent crime. That, ladies and gentlemen, is absurd. That is obtuse. And those two things really show you what happens when you do not have balance in our government, when you do not have what the founding fathers envisioned for us, and you do not have that compromise, you do not have that representation of the people, of all the facets of government, when you just keep having these organizations that think they know better, that are going to tell you what to do, and they just keep take, and taking. Is it reasonable for the Chicago Public Schools to just simply go on strike one morning until their demands are met in the middle of this and of an already stressed out system and a stressed out family for millions of people across that city? Absolutely not. Is it reasonable to think that one man, one judge can just decide, I know these people are super violent, but I think that them waiting in a specific spot without denied bail, which is a precedent that is largely accepted across the United States in all 50 states, isn't cool because it might, violate this concept of innocent proven guilty. No, they're not guilty. They haven't said that. They're awaiting trial. But no, I'm going to be one man and I am going to say that I value this notion of, honestly, I don't even know what the notion is at this point. My ability to power, my ability to legislate from the bench, and that's what I'm going to do. It's awful. This is not what America was designed to be. This is what we shouldn't have. We have got to do better. We have got to call attention to these things, and we have got to say, this isn't right. Because this is where we're going. And this is the scary thing to me that's most of all, is that so far today, we have, to talk about it, we've talked about how our scientists can't even explain to us in simple terms how we can keep ourselves safe. And the current administration isn't promoting any of that. What the current administration is choosing to do today is somehow try and, back a teachers union that's unbackable, while at the same time saying kids should be in school, which I think we can all agree with. We've got a governor yelling at motorists for doing what motorists do every single year on his highways because there happened to be snow and he couldn't cover it. What's the trend line through all of this, ladies and gentlemen? Where do all of these people sit? Where is the lack of compromise coming from for this filibuster. It's not from the center. It's not from the right. It's from the left. And that right now is the problem. And that is why in 2022, the vote needs to go out and you need to vote for the ability for the United States of America to get closer to what the founding fathers designed. And that is a diverse set of opinions that are intelligent, that are well-meaning, that are capable to negotiate a good deal. But the thing is that especially because Mark is a much better business guy than I am. He's been working the market and he's been working deals for years. And the thing that I know about every good business guy when I talk to him is that they all say the same thing. It's like, you know, you got to what's probably the fairest deal is when you look across the table and the other guy looks at you and you're both thinking the same thing. And that is, maybe I could have got a little more. Maybe. That's when you know you got there, because it means you compromise. The problem right now and what we need for this balance is there's no compromise in the system anymore. There's just takers. There are just people that are trying to use garbage ideology to take, like they are with the filibuster. Garbage ideology of all this confusion about COVID to take this power and demand things of an already overstressed system that just happens to be one of the deepest left in a city that I know pretty well. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is abhorrent. Well, I am definitely not Mark. And I probably didn't do this a quarter of as well as he does because he's got a real knack for it. He's been doing much, much longer than I am. But I do appreciate you all taking the time to hang out with me and listen here on the Schaftlein Report. Mark, we wish you the absolute best, my friend. We hope that you get well soon. Again, my name is Tom Amenta. I'm the author of the book, The 20-Year War, which is a photojournal that's right behind me, chronicling the adventures of 71 different veterans of our armed services, talking about what inspired them to enlist, what they did in service of this great nation of ours, what their transition out of service is like, and what they're doing right now to keep America what it is, and that is the greatest nation in the world. Thank you all so much again for spending the time with me here from now 7 degrees warm Omaha, Nebraska. Have a wonderful evening.